Welcome to For Book Lovers Only Live Radio, where we discuss amazing books written by talented authors. For Book Lovers Only Live Radio is a proud member of the Village Connector Media Network. If you love books, we have a home for you. Now time for your host and chief book lover, Rob Brown.
Hey, book fans. Welcome to For Book Lovers Only Live Radio, where if you love books, we have a home for you. My name is Rob Brown, your internet radio host and chief book lover. Want to welcome you to today's episode and also want to thank you so much for visiting our website, ordering books from our website, watching our TV shows and our live radio shows. We really appreciate your support. Thank you so much. Today, I'm really excited about our guests who will be joining us via Zoom from Canada. Cassidy and Daniela Parlane. They're a great couple. They are authors, relationship coaches, and speakers. They head a marriage ministry called Make Your Marriage Great Again, and this ministry is truly improving the lives and the marriages of couples worldwide. Now, aside from ministry, Daniela is a homeschooling mom, an avid blogger, and an entrepreneur, and she excels at all three. Cassidy is a blue-collar worker. He's a worship artist. He's got an amazing voice. He's super talented, and this phenomenal couple has written a book, What Love Is Not, that they're going to be sharing with us right now. Danielle and Cassidy, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Hello. Thank you so much for having us.
Oh, we are excited and honored that you are on our show today. I've been looking forward to this interview for quite some time. I'm really excited about your book. I wanted to actually save all of my normal announcements that I normally make at the beginning of the show for the end because I just was so excited. I wanted to dive right in to the book. And I just want to ask the both of you, what inspired you to write the book, What Love Is Not? What was the inspiration?
Well, the main inspiration behind this book for us began with our journey of a failed marriage. And both of us have experienced what that looks like firsthand. We're both acquainted with the pain, the rejection, the feeling of neglect, the feeling of pain, the feeling of frustration, the feeling of unworthiness. And, we understand that when you go through a broken situation like marriage, that a part of your soul is literally ripped out of you. Mm-hmm. And given that experience and just the pain that comes from that, we wrote this book simply out of our pain, and we truly from our heart, we do not want anyone to go through mm-hmm. that. And so, we didn't just get up one day and just became passionate about marriage all of a sudden. It was definitely not something that was on my radar for sure. Yeah, I can speak for Daniela as well. And, in the last 5 years, God's just been really placed this passion, this burning passion inside of us to see marriages be whole, and just experience what it means to have true joy and true mm-hmm. happiness, in a world that is so broken and so hopeless. So we really wanted to provide hope for couples out there, given the divorce rate in our world and the church in general. We just really wanted to provide some materials, give people some tools, some resources to say, hey, these are some pitfalls that you can look forward to if you would like to avoid this horrible tragedy of divorce. And again, having been there ourselves, we can truly say, listen, you don't want to go down that road, but here are some tools to help you to somehow avoid what that tragedy looks like. So, yeah, that's definitely one of the inspiration behind this book.
Well, that shows a lot of resiliency on your part to, have gone through something so traumatic. And then when you recover, you want to give back to people. To make sure that, from the lessons that you all have learned, you can help, other couples maybe not make those same decisions or things that may have led to that. I find that shows a lot of character on your part. Daniela, this question is for you. Why is it important to have a vision for your marriage?
I believe it's a biblical principle. The Bible actually tells us that without vision, the people perish. And especially given our past experience of a failed divorce, we have first-handedly experienced that because there was no vision. We kind of got into a relationship blindly without really having set goals and without even really understanding why we did it.
Right.
We were just following our heart, which is kind of the mantra that the culture propagates. And what we learned in mining the scriptures is that there is actually a divine purpose behind marriage. And for those that aren't aware, marriage is a reflection of Christ and his church. And we found that that was a real revelation for us. As we dug into the scriptures, we saw this pattern, and it just put a whole new meaning behind marriage. So once we grasp this, once we understand the why, there's just so much power behind why. And it really drives your passion, and it helps you understand why you're even on this earth. And when God puts two people together, there's a reason. And marriage is about just discovering each other and understanding how your strengths together and how the gifts that God put in you, how you can work together into pursuing God's work. We have kingdom work to do on this earth, and he's given you a partner to do that with. So I would say that would be why having a vision is important. Secondly, it just helps you to avoid, if you can't see where you're going, logically, you're going to fall.
Right.
So it just helps you to gear exactly where you're going.
And when you have that vision, you basically stay on that path, because if you don't have a vision,
right.
then you're kind of you're kind of going
into
from
the
left
pit.
to right, into the pit. Exactly. Now, obviously, in a book about marriage, it's going to talk about love. In it, you state, quote, "Love involves our intention. It requires our initiative. It is a constant act of our will that flows out of our desire to uplift that person above ourselves. It is the perpetual submission of self." I want to talk about that a little bit because, in our culture, that's all it's about. It's about self. What can I get for myself? How can I help myself? How many things can I buy for myself? You're teaching that it's about self, but it's about the other self, the other person. You put the other person first. Expound on that a little bit.
Well, we believe that the scripture is pretty much counterintuitive to what the culture around us teaches. It's a pretty much like an upside down kingdom, if you may. So yes, instead of putting yourself and your interests ahead of your spouse, we are teaching, based on what we have discovered, is that true love actually puts the other first. And if we understood that in its entirety, if both individuals begin to put the other first, this is the only place in our book that we encourage couples to try to outdo each other. Can you imagine if couples begin to begin what it looks like to outdo each other in love, and not just in words, but in deed, in action? This is a beautiful picture of what marriage could be. And so in a culture that is all about selfie, that is all about me,
right.
We could totally, radically transform relationships altogether. And this is not just in the marriage relationship. When you are even in a business relationship, if you understand what it means to put the other first, customer service is one of those things as well, which is a lost art in our world.
Totally.
So imagine,
totally.
Putting the other first is such an art. And when we understand that, we can truly radically change the spectrum of relationships altogether.
And that's one of the reasons why I'm so excited about your book is because not many people get that. I mean, they hear it and they kind of give lip service to it, but they don't really internalize it. You're teaching people to internalize this. Like,
Right.
don't think about self. Think about the first thing that you should be thinking about is what can I do for my spouse? What can I do for the other person? How can I make them happy? And your focus is always on the other person. I think that's amazing.
Well, the first line in our book says this: we often do all the things that love is not, expecting the results of what love is. And, think about that for a moment. Like, we do everything that love isn't. There are many books that are written about what love is. And so this book is like looking at love from a different perspective, because often we do everything that love isn't, and we expect to get the results of love. There's a famous saying that says you keep doing the same thing over and over, expecting different results. And there's a word for that, And so we definitely want to encourage couples out there to really examine your love, examine how your approach to love, and really try to figure out, like, am I doing the things that love isn't? Interestingly, the book starts off talking about what love isn't, but it ends off admonishing the reader and really encouraging them and telling them, listen, this is what love is according to Scripture. So it's a pretty in-depth, I would say, theory. Love is a theory. And if you understand the theory of love, it's pretty phenomenal.
It is. It absolutely is. Daniela, in the book, you talk about space makes waste. What do you mean by that?
Yes. I'm sure we've all come across situations with couples where you've heard the phrase, I just need to take some space. We need some space apart. Or couples feel that they use space or taking a break as a therapeutic approach to their relationship. But what we found is that when you do that, you're actually causing a vacuum, and something else always takes up that space. It's very easy for something to kind of put a wedge between you and your spouse. And really what happens is it leaves you vulnerable to different attacks, that's the time when you are the weakest.
Right.
And generally when you're feeling weak, that's when
your weaknesses come.
Exactly.
When you're feeling weak, that's when your weaknesses.
When your emotions,
exactly.
When your emotions are fragile,
right.
That's when you're most vulnerable to your weaknesses and temptations.
And you fight better together.
Absolutely.
People think that you fight better alone, and this is a deception. This is an absolute deception. And this is why we encourage couples not to succumb to the emotions of what you're feeling in that moment, because it usually, when you make a decision from an emotional standpoint, it's always the wrong decision. Yeah. And indeed, space makes waste.
And your emotions are not based on truth. No. That's what we want to emphasize here. And when you're in that vulnerable space, it's very tempting to make a decision based on something that's completely not real.
Right.
And God put you together again to be problem solvers, and you're problem solvers together. You weren't meant to do it separately. You need to be in alignment, and you do that by being together and figuring things out together between you, your spouse, and God.
And again, this is I'd say there are some situations that are toxic that requires more than just space. Right. But in many situations in relationships, the issues can be resolved together. Yes.
Right.
And we do encourage couples to just really put your heads together and really figure this thing out. And if you can't do it by yourself, the Scripture tells us that there is wisdom in counsel. And so we encourage people to go after godly counsel. That is definitely something that's missing, because there are couples out there who feel as if they can't trust their information with someone else. But isn't that the opposite of what we should be thinking. We should
Right.
actually be wanting to reach out, because the thing that you cannot expose will expose you. And this is what we tell couples: you have to expose the issue
in order to fix it.
and definitely speak to someone or people who will have your best interest at heart,
Right.
and speak to people who are who will give you an objective perspective, because you definitely want that.
And doing that as a couple, I think a lot of couples, when they come across these mountains or these huge problems, like you say, space makes waste. A lot of times they want to kind of, quote, retreat into their own corner. You're saying,
Right.
no,
Yep.
you always need to be together, attack the problems together, have the
You're a
great times
team.
together, always be a team.
Isolation is the enemy of true love.
That's right.
I can't argue with that. I can't argue. That is absolute truth. Now, in the book, you also talk about respect. Respect is another important theme. And you both write, respect emotionally safeguards the marriage. If respect is not kept in check, it can cause a vicious cycle of hurt, defensive reaction, and guilt. What are some ways that kind of couples lose that view of respect of each other? What are some things that they do that is disrespectful, and how can they get back on track?
I think one of the things that in couples need to really check is the posture of their hearts. The main issue in the marriage is the heart. The Bible even tells us this, that the heart is evil. It's desperately wicked, which means the heart is constantly seeking to do the next bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so the heart is definitely something we stress on and talk about, the conditions of our hearts. One of the things that one of the main thing that a couple, that couples experience anyway, is sometimes they say things that they don't truly mean.
Right.
And so it's not what you say, but how you say it.
Right.
And what's that famous quote from Tony Robbins? That don't question
The intention. Question the behavior, but not the
behavior.
intentions
Oh,
of
okay.
spouse when you're having, a heated moment.
Right.
You're not seeing eye to eye.
Right.
Because the minute you start to question their intention,
Right.
now you're going down a dangerous path.
Right. And so when we say respect safeguards the marriage, respect is key. If you respect a person enough, you can agree to disagree on so many levels.
Right.
Is that correct?
Absolutely. Don't get too comfortable
No.
either. I think that's another issue, is that we get so comfortable, you could become kind of complacent, and then you feel like you could just
Say anything.
That's right. There's that fine line. You have to be, it's kind of like the balance between being comfortable enough to be totally transparent,
Right.
yet at the same time, not letting everything come out of your mouth.
Right.
Because especially when you're having an emotional moment, like we
Right.
mentioned before, in the heat of emotions, your feelings lie. So you might say something based on that moment,
Right.
that emotion, but it's not based on the truth.
Right.
So you have to really be discerning. So I think that's key, is always stay connected with the Holy Spirit, be discerning, listen, always listen before
Yes.
attempting to speak.
Yes.
That is so important.
Key.
Don't be quick to want to snap back.
Right.
Just take that moment to just pause, breathe, process,
Yes.
listen, really put yourself in the other person's shoes before attempting to open your mouth.
Practically speaking, I'll give you sort of an example of how we sort of communicate. When we first met, my wife would be at a time you would say, "Why do you take so long to answer me?
Mhm.
Why are you?"
I wasn't used to that.
She wasn't used to, Cassidy just processing what she just said, and instead of having a snappy response, for me, I was trying to figure out the best way to say this in a
Right.
way that is not going to cause offense and bitterness, because people think that marriage is just one day someone just gets up and decide I'm walking out. These are little things that build up over the years.
Right.
And some of these things are caused by disrespect. And, we've heard this so many times where there's this thing where people have written about saying that men, they desire respect, but women desire love. And we want to sort of just bring a different perspective on that point, that respect is right across the board. You cannot have a true, in-depth conversation without respect. And this is not just in the marriage relationship. You can respect.
It's a principle, absolutely.
My grandmother used to say, respect will take you across the world. And so it's not just in marriage. Respect is needed, but it's just in any relationship role. Like, again, you can agree to disagree when there is respect, and that will allow you to come to a humane resolution without killing each other.
Absolutely.
There can be a win-win. A win-win is possible.
Absolutely. The key is that at the end of that conversation, you both win. It's not Cassidy won this argument or
You're
Danielle.
A team. It's a team effort.
We win at the end of the conversation because we did not give in to our emotions. We did not give in to, the first thing that came to our minds, because that's often the wrong thing anyway, right?
You're absolutely right. And I think a lot of couples, and I think a lot of people in general, regardless of the relationship, a lot of times they're not listening to hear what the other person is saying or what they mean. They're listening because they're trying to figure out what their snappy comeback is going to be.
That's right.
And I think that's a great point that you all make in your book. I also want to touch upon another very sensitive issue, which is social media. And Danielle, I'd like you to kind of help us out with this. You're right. It is very important that we guard our marriages from the pit of social media. Social media acts as a gateway for illicit behaviors that could destroy our marriages. There's so much we could talk about with regards to social media. We're probably having another additional show. But tell us what you mean about that when you talk about like a married couple has to guard against social media and the traps and pitfalls. Tell us more about that.
Yes, absolutely. I just think the fact that, I'm sure you've heard this before, technology and the internet can be both a blessing and a curse. It can be used for so much good, but it's also, there's a potential for evil. It's the fact that just the easy access and the fact that at your fingertips, you could literally just, you could bring up so much danger into your home, into your relationship, especially. Like, for instance, in the book, we talk about how easy it is to connect, for instance, with an old fling or with maybe someone you went to school with or someone, that you knew from the past. And what might start out as something innocent could turn out, it could kind of start sparking up old emotions. It could, something that started out as innocent as, oh, let me see how this person's been doing. And it's very easy to kind of blur the boundaries.
Right.
So we talk about just making sure that, you don't cross those boundaries and do not have those don't get yourself in those situations where, you're, especially in private, the other spouse doesn't know anything about it. And you're going on with this conversation with this person of the opposite sex. It's just so dangerous. It can open so many doors, especially the fact that the other aspect of that is you're not actually physically in the same room. You're not face to face. It's so much easier to open up to people over the internet. So that's when it's the potential of an emotional connection can happen. And before you know it, that can go out of control. And we've seen that statistically, there have been many divorces just due to that alone, just due to the social media.
Really? So social media, I mean, when it's misused, it's destroyed a lot of marriages?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of pitfalls out there for couples to be aware of, and unfortunately, social media is just another one. If it's being used that way, and where
Right.
there is mistrust, yeah, it definitely can be damaging. And that's one of the This is another reason why I love this book so much, because this is the first book that I've read that actually addressed this situation. I mean, sometimes you hear about it here or there, but you all really go in depth about this. I really like that.
Thank you.
We were intentional in writing this book because, we really, like I said in the beginning, that we've seen this firsthand. We've seen the devastation of what it means to go through a broken relationship, marriage in particular. And these are just pitfalls. We're saying we're helping people by being their blind spot in this book. And we're saying, hey,
You've been there.
here are some things to look out for. And while there are others who may dispute what we're saying, again, it's not for everyone. This book was written specifically for those who feel in their heart that, hey, this speaks to me. And we believe that that's a large majority of people that we've come across.
Well, once again, I love this book. I think it's an important book. I think that people who are thinking about getting married can get a lot from this book. People are currently married. People have been married for 10, 15, 20 years, 30 years. I think regardless of wherever you are on the marriage spectrum, you're going to get a lot out of this book. And Casty, I want to reserve this last question for you, and Daniela, you can kind of jump in too. But what do you all want readers to get from this book? What do you want them to take away after having read this book? There's just like one or two things that they can take away after reading this book. What do you want them to take away?
Definitely, having read this book, I want the reader to leave with understanding what true love is all about. And we understand that true love, we cannot fully grasp true love outside of the one who is true love himself. And this is so important because, so many people have been searching for love in all the wrong places, and they would not just go to the source. Oftentimes we're just unplugged from the source. And much like a light bulb, if it is unplugged from the source, there's no electricity and you can't get blood out of stone, So,
Right.
yeah, I definitely feel that when our readers read this book, it will sort of take them right back to the source of love. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Daniela.
Yes, absolutely. And the fact that it just breaks down, according to 1 Corinthians 13, it's actually giving you, it's not like some mystical idea.
Right.
There's actually a guideline on exactly how to achieve that.
Right.
God didn't leave us, to just figure it out on our own. He gives us that. And another thing to just keep in mind is a lot of people, when they get into marriage hoping for happiness.
Yes.
And happiness, what they don't understand is God actually didn't create marriage for your happiness. And a lot of people may not actually like the sound of that.
Oh, stop
It
for a
was-
moment. Whoa, no, what? No, not happiness?
It was actually,
I got married to be happy.
it was
Right.
intended for our spiritual maturity to, to reflect Christ and his bride. And ultimately, you're going to get something better than happiness, and that's
Wow.
joy. Joy
Yes.
is actually an eternal attribute because
Yes.
it's an attribute of God. Happiness is something temporal and fleeting. It's
Yes.
something that's circumstantial.
Yes.
You might feel happy one moment, you just got it,
$1 million.
Yeah, and even that is not going to last.
Right.
Sorry, guys.
So, yeah, because to emphasize on that, I really feel, that people, they're not searching for happiness. This is what they think they're
yeah.
searching for, but truly, what they're searching for is joy. Happiness is the enemy of joy. If you go for happiness, you'll never experience joy.
It's a byproduct, really.
It's a byproduct, but also a byproduct of maturity. So we encourage couples to continuously grow in your relationship, grow in your love, because when you grow in and become mature, that is where you will begin to find true joy, and as a result, true happiness. You know,
It will follow.
absolutely, absolutely. You know, if you stop growing, you know, you will stop experiencing momentum. If you stop growing and stop not going after maturity, there will be no momentum. There will be no fuel. There will be no synergy in
That's
the
right.
marriage. And so this is what we encourage people to do: go after maturity.
Yes.
Maturity is king. If you go after maturity, what it means to be mature, like I am constantly getting allowing myself to experience self-development. I'm not just staying at the one place. I want to be my best self for my wife, and her wanting to be her best self for me. Come on, I mean, this is like totally opposite to what we've heard in the past.
Absolutely, yeah.
You know, yeah. So man, this has radically changed how we approach relationship. And so if we constantly become our best self,
That is synergy right there. You're gonna. It's amazing.
It is. It
and
absolutely
that's where
is.
happiness, true happiness, lasting happiness flows out of that,
That's right.
out of being mature, and maturity produces joy, and joy produces happiness, lasting happiness.
Well, I can see why this book is so popular and it's changing, the lives of so many couples. I mean, this is some really phenomenal advice that the book gives, and I know that people are excited. I want to make sure that our viewers are able to follow you on social media. They can reach out to you with questions, and I want to give that information to our viewers and listeners now. They can do so through at Make Your Marriage Great Again for Instagram, on Facebook at Make Your Marriage Great Again 3,
Right.
Twitter at What Love Is Not 3.
Correct.
This is on YouTube, Make Your Marriage Great Again. LinkedIn, Make Your Marriage Great Again. And your email address is makeyourmarriaregreatagain@gmail.com. They can go to your website, www.whatloveisnot.ca. They can also buy many, many, many copies of your book through forbooklaversonly.com. And we know they will, because this book is needed now more than ever. And before we go, I just wanted to give you all a minute or so to just share some last thoughts with our viewers.
We're so excited to share this book with as many people as possible. As mentioned, we just want to see marriage be great again.
That's right.
There's just such a stigma around marriage. People would rather shack up than actually experiencing the joy of marriage. In fact, people they don't see the difference between shacking up and marriage anymore, and it's a real tragedy in our society. We're just encouraging folks to really explore what it means to have a more richer, a more fulfilling marriage, and you could do that in a holistic way, because we look at marriage from a holistic standpoint as well, from physical, spiritual, emotional, mental, whatever it is. And we've seen great success from doing that, having spoken to multiple couples the last few years. So yeah, this is exciting for us. We're excited for your relationships out there, and we're trusting that God's going to do something radical in your life that's going to keep your relationship lit.
Yes, stay
Awesome.
lit.
Awesome. Cassidy, Daniela, thank you all so much for coming on for Book Lovers Only Live Radio. We're excited about your book. And if you decide to write a follow-up book, please come back and see us. We'd love to have you again.
Definitely.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having us. It's such an honor.
Absolutely. The honor is all ours. Thank you so much. The book is What Love Is Not, available for purchase on forbooklaversonly.com. Make sure you pick up a copy for yourself, for the couple that is in your life that may need some help, and for the couples that are doing well. This book is going to help all married couples. You can get it once again at forbookloversonly.com. And for all of our viewers and listeners who are tuning in for the first time, I'd like to cordially invite you to join our Book Lovers Club. There's no cost. We have free gifts for upcoming contest winners. So you want to join ASAP. That's the only way you can win free coffee mugs, baseball caps, tote bags, and other things. You can join in two ways. One, www.forbookloversonly.com, or you can just text the word book to 301-321-8887, and then you'll receive a message with a link. Click on the link and then fill in the form, then click sign me up, and you're automatically a member. We'll give you a free gift just for joining. And we look forward to you joining our family of book lovers. And also be sure to follow us on social media as well. Facebook for Book Lovers Only, Twitter at FBL ONLY, and Instagram at For Book Lovers Only 15. We're out of time, but thank you so much for tuning in, and thank you once again to Cassidy and Daniela Parlane. The book is What Love Is Not. Pick up your copy today. My name is Rob Brown, your internet radio host and chief book lover, and this is For Book Lovers Only Live Radio, where if you love books, we have a home for you. Take care. I'll see you next time.